going to cover these topics of how we can stay calm and continue applying lean during COVID-19. I wanted, in particular, to welcome our members from LCI Qatar, and I wanted to clarify that you guys have all benefited from me doing PDCA, Continuous Improvement myself, because I gave this presentation, a similar one, on Tuesday, just 2 days ago. And based upon the feedback and ideas in that one, I have actually expanded this topic. Joanne, is that good so far?
Yes, it's good.
Okay. So to start off, I want you guys all to think about what is the mood in your company right now? What is the mood of your project team members who are primarily in the trailer? That's your project management staff. What is the mood of your project team members who work primarily on site, the field staff? And what is the mood of your project's construction workers? Gloria Flores, the daughter of the language action work, has clarified that there are moods that get in the way of learning and moods that are conducive to learning. And in particular, I argue that these moods are also get in the way of quality installed work, and they can be conducive to quality installed work. So because of COVID-19, we all must acknowledge that there are new moods on our projects now. There's fear and anxiety, overwhelmment, and a lack of confidence and insecurity. But in particular, let's pay attention to the mood of our project's construction workers. In Boston, recently, there's been an article talking about this challenge. The title is, "They're all just waiting to get sick. Construction sites raise concerns in coronavirus pandemic." I'll read these slides. Construction has become a divisive issue in Massachusetts during the outbreak. The governor has classified real estate development as essential and says it can continue. But some mayors, including Boston's Mayor Marty Walsh, have ordered most work to halt. There are risks in keeping going and other risks in stopping. The tension is forcing companies and workers to make some difficult decisions. But with coronavirus cases in Massachusetts continuing to rise, the sanitation stakes are now extra high. They quoted a spouse of one of the construction workers. She noted, "My husband is very nervous about bringing illness home. Her husband needs to support their family, so he keeps going to work. She says it's hard to keep 6 feet of space between workers on a construction site, as health experts recommend." And this is, I'm going to read her quote, because we have to remember, think about the workers and the families behind them. "I'm trying to treat him as if he's contaminated all the time," she said. "There's no hug and kiss hello. I mean, you can't even get a hug from the people that you care about because you're so afraid." Okay? I want to remind us all that the primary lean principle is respect for people. This is highlighted especially in recent LCI publications and on the website. The 2015 book, Transforming Design and Construction, of which I'm one of the contributors, have tried to clarify that people comes first and foremost. And on the LCI webpage, you can see this logo, right? It's respect for people, ties everything together. So with that in mind, construction project leaders should acknowledge and respect the fear and anxiety, the overwhelmment, the lack of confidence and insecurity moods in your project's workers. So as construction leaders, what can we do about this? Well, we need to, as the leaders of construction projects, transform the risk of COVID-19 into an opportunity. We need to help transform those negative moods into positive moods of ambition, resolution, confidence, and trust. And how can we do this? By helping people keep calm and planning on. Think of this disruption as a time to reflect, a time to plan, and a time to make ready, so that when you can go more on site, have more workers on site. You can go without interruption, without roadblocks, so that you have continuous workflow. I will cover 4 main areas, however, I will mention that I'll talk about work shifts, supply chain. The last line is just in the 5S. However, I will mention that the supply chain is actually a very rich topic, and it potentially is a future section, but I will address it briefly in this presentation. In terms of the work shifts, I propose that during the crisis, make your project the job site of choice by operating with a 36-hour work week while paying for a 40-hour work week. Many of you may say, how could you suggest I try to do that? Well, I can tell you I have a number of projects right now in progress that I'm coaching. And some of them are definitely, even though they are deemed essential, they are allowed to permitted to continue and do emergency work. Even with that limitations, just emergency work only, critical work only for MEP systems, for starting up the central utility plant, etc. Even with that critical work, we cannot find enough workers. It's really hard to find workers to come on site because people remember about those news. They are scared, they're concerned, right? So what kind of ways to envision this 36-hour work week? Well, I propose that we consider about 4 9s or 3 12s. So here's a couple different scenarios. If you have 4 9s, then you could potentially manage 2 shifts. The first shift from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the second shift from 3:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m., late at night, the night shift. But I emphasize that it's important to have a safety buffer between the two, because you need at least a half hour to allow the first shift workers to mobilize and get off-site. Demobilize and come off-site, and for the second shift workers to come on-site. And you don't want transmission between those 2 groups of workers. For example, on one of my projects, we have, in the busy times, we had 500 workers. If you break them into 2 shifts and eventually you want operating back to normal, how can you really safely protect 250 workers from accidentally infecting the other 250 workers? But with this, you have potentially 72 production hours a week, and you might need those production hours. 3 12s with 3 groups, 3 12s with 2 groups, it should be 2 groups, would have a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 12-hour shift. So the advantage of this is workers, they're going to come to site only 3 times a week, and they're going to do a 12-hour shift. But I wouldn't organize them to have them work day 1, 2, and 3 in a row. They need rest in between. So have group 1 work on days 1, 3, and 5, and so group number 2 work on days 2, 4, and 6. And then you can have them get at least 72 production hours a week. If you want to start getting creative, if you're really tied up for work, then there's a possibility that you can think about having 4 9s with 2 shifts and manage across 3 groups over 6 days. The orange represents trade number 1 in the parade of trades. The purple represents trade 3 of the parade of trades, and the blue represents trade 2 of the parade of trades. You can have them working in a staggered fashion, and you can maintain good flow, potentially, on your job sites. If I had a choice, I would actually love to be trade number 3. I would love to work on a Friday morning, on a Saturday morning, and then on a Monday night and a Tuesday night. I would love that myself if I had to pick. What's happening right now on one of my projects is they're doing a staggered start. They're paying people 40 hours for 40 hours worth of work. And that staggered start is put into place to avoid the crunch at the start and end of the shift. So, for example, in some trades, for example, one trade may have up to 100 workers on site, for instance, but right now we're at limited workers. Trade 1 will start at 6 a.m., trade 2 will start at 6:30 a.m., and trade 3 will start at 7 a.m. So you stagger the the time people come onto the site, and you stagger the way they come off the site. But what about checking the temperature of the workers to permit entry on site? Well, there are different ways you can do it. You can hire on-site nurses, you can train security guards, you can train some safety staff, but you need to follow the regulations that are expected in your jurisdiction. Our friends at DPR has provided me some of these nice images to show of the way that they're managing the entry. Now, this is a gentleman. He has some plexiglass in front of him, and he's admitting the workers into the site. Can you see the hole in this plexiglass? Not quite. Here it is. There's a hole there, right? It's a big plexiglass piece. It's this piece right here, right? And he extends his hand out to measure the temperature, okay? Here's an example of it being used, right? They're being emitted. They take the temperature. There's a hole, right? Plexiglass is way up here, right, to protect the entryway on site. Last week, the Construction Users Roundtable had an April 2nd webinar as well about how to deal with these things, and they shared these thermal camera options. So I've copied those resources here on this slide. So if you get these slides, you'll be able to as well get some sources for thermal cameras to help with this effort. Another thing to think about is how to have nice little kiosks, safety kiosks, to have the appropriate PPE ready and at hand. I guess since masks are so valuable now, you need to lock these things up. But this is a labor foreman in Boston, and he was very proud to show me one of the cleanest job sites I've seen in a long time. And laborers are very crucial for us to keep job sites clean. It's important as a part of this is to ask workers to respect the job site by cleaning it daily and keeping it clean. And we can do that because we need to do that because a clean job site is a productive job site. We all know that, right? But how do we maintain that? Well, one of the things is to use 5S. I'm not going to go into 5S. There's many resources online to see about examples of 5S, shadow boards, etc., to organize, set things in order. But most importantly is the concept to clean as you go. So when do you have that time, right? When is there time to clean? Well, I propose that at the shift start, for the first 40 minutes, you'll have maybe stretch and flex and safety toolbox talks. And now because of you want to maintain social distancing, maybe this stretch and flex and safety toolbox talk is done online so the workers can do it in the safety of their own spaces on site. And then we want them to do pre-test planning and disinfect, right? When is their time to clean? They disinfect their tools and their equipment and their workspace. And at the shift end, in the last 40 minutes, to ask them to reflect and disinfect, right? To clean their tools, to clean their workspaces. So it's clean so that when the next trade works enter that spot, it's clean and neat, and the next trade can work productively. But there's a common question right now is where can I find disinfectant? Well, I give shout out to one of my former employers, Cynthia Construction. They have partnered with a local distillery, and they have asked them to help them produce much needed hand sanitizer to keep their job sites and workers safe. And this is a fantastic idea, and I encourage you all to do the same thing too. That will keep our distilleries, local small businesses open, and to help keep things clean on site. So, but remember, we're talking about when we're talking about the shift start and the shift end, when they're cleaning and disinfecting their tools and their workspaces, what else could they be doing? Well, at the start, we could have them doing pre-task planning to prepare themselves and make sure that they know the work plan or can familiarize with what promises they have made. And then at the end, let's reflect and disinfect. And during reflect and disinfect, let's ask the workers to pause or reflect daily on what is working well that we should keep doing, what is not working well that we should change, how can we make those changes, and who will be responsible for those changes. Give the workers time to do this. If you do, then you can have them be partners with you in continuous improvement. If you don't give your workers time to do this, if you don't lead them and expect this of them, then you won't get continuous improvement with them. They're just going to follow along. They won't try to help, right? Because you don't respect them. Respecting them shows that you want to hear from them, their ideas. And not only do you hear their ideas, you guys work as partners to implement the ideas. Again, my buddies from DPR reminded me also to remind people that, if you have workers who are required to work from home right now for a period of time, maybe it's a good time for us all to ask them to pause and reflect on the last 6 months. And again, what is working well on your project for the last 6 months that we should keep on doing? What is not working well, and how can we make those changes, and who will be responsible for those changes? Reflection time is value-adding time. It's important that we leverage the time we have at home to reflect, to plan, and to mobilize and get ready to implement once we can get back on site. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk about creating a leaner supply chain. We have to recognize that we are getting products and materials from all over the country, from different parts, and they require shipping by boat, by train, by trucking, and these all means of transportations are being limited now just because of COVID-19. We are also getting products from abroad, and we need to think about how might we restructure the way we are expecting materials to come on site. A very important and good policy to have on job sites is to have a 3-day installation expectation, which means that for all material brought to site, on the job site, it should be installed within 3 days. So on day 1, the trades can bring the materials onto site and stage them. And by day 2, and at most day 3, that material has been installed on site. One of the most expensive comments on the job site is just put it over there for now. When we just put it over there for now, how many times has that pile, that pallet of materials been moved and removed again and again and again by different trades as they're trying to get work done? Moving and removing work, moving stuff around, having a ton of inventory on site, that's all waste. What's important is to have materials come on site and get installed immediately. So in this post-COVID, in this COVID world that we have, and afterwards, we need to think about how can we balance production in the factories to match the rate of install on site. And as a result, maybe we might be needing to manage multiple workflows of multiple installs on site, and to slow it down to one piece flow. That would be most valuable for our job sites, to have one piece flow manage that.
And Cynthia, I want to add that we really can't move things back and forth anymore, because if you have a lot of people touching things, it's gonna increase infection rate.
Right.
So you should only touch it once.
That's a very good point.
So you should only touch it once.
We just want to touch it once. Bring it onto the site, install it. Bring it to site, install it. And the supply chain discussion is much more rich because we also talk about all the prefabrication opportunities, the modularity opportunities, the kitting options, right? Bring things on site ready to go. The most ideal job site is only the assembly of prefabricated units. So on site, there's almost no processing of material on site, no more. Process all the material, cutting, welding, all those pieces, as much as we can, do it on the safety of the factory floor in a manufacturing plant, and bring that material slowly but gradually and steadily to the job site for one piece flow to manage flows across the whole project. So the project will be much more smooth. And if you have a smooth project, you can operate with a lot smaller footprint to store materials. So
you think that given the situation, Cynthia, more people are going to explore prefabrication now because it's a way to.
I'm sure of it. This will definitely be the case, and it's not. Before people sort of said, "Well, I always hear all kinds of excuses, but now it's more important than ever, especially to sort of figure out how to stabilize the rate at which stuff is installed on site and to make safe working conditions for all people who are adding value to our projects. I wanted to mention that what's happening right now, one of my projects, is we're getting millwork in from Canada, and the millwork fabricator is asking us, well, what should we do now with this delay? So what we're doing is we're actually taking advantage of the time because one of this project is being limited to just only essential work, the minimal work, the emergency work on site, and the critical work. And during that time, the bulk of the trades are off site. Only the MEP trades are on site. And so one of the superintendents is taking the measurements, doing the field measurements on site. There's nobody else around. They're doing the field measurements and sharing those field measurements with the mill worker because they do need on-site field measure to do the fabrication. And they're preparing the fabrication so when we're permitted to allow people back on site, we will organize it so that we could have a steady flow of millwork coming in from Canada and to be installed, at a steady clip once we are permitted to proceed again with the non-ancestral trades, I guess is the way to call it. Okay. At this time, now I'm going to transition to talk about some elements of the last planner system and how we need to think about it with this now crisis with delays on our projects. As construction project leaders, we need to think about, originally, lots of projects, they're organized in this fashion. At the master planning level, you have identified a couple of major workflows, right? A workflow could be, and they all support a milestone at the end. Typical milestones are, for example, footings and foundation are in, structure and roof are in, facade is in, rough interior work is in, and finished interior work is in, right? And we always try to do an overlap between those phases to improve our ability to deliver a project earlier. I'm going to guess that a lot of us will be caught in this problem that with COVID-19 coming in, the project end date still won't change. Now, if you can negotiate a change to your end date, that's better for you. Congratulations. But you may be stuck, as I expect I may be stuck, with my project teams, that the project end date never changes. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to manage these multiple workflows all at the same time. They're happening all in parallel. But per our discussion just now about the supply chain, if we figure out a way to steadily install work at a steady clip, balance the workflow from the factory to the job site, and just have a steady clip of production, we can have multiple workflows working, and that's okay. So if you think about it, what if, if you had to have this happen and all these are, before this might have represented, for example, the installation of millwork on floor 20, 21, 22. And now suddenly we need this happening, 20, 21, and 22. Well, then you could potentially have, organize your factory to deliver that material, and then you could have crews organized so that they are socially distanced and they can work on floors 20, 21, and 22. But it's also just as important if there are different workflows, and now these have to do considerable overlap between them. Then what happens is there's this tension, and if you have different superintendents managing these workflows, you may fall into this problem, which happens on many projects. These are multiple superintendents managing their own workflows. They may have a tension between them because superintendents are all fighting over the same resource of the trades, the workers from the trades, and they may fight for the attention of the foreman to say, hey, focus on my area, my workflows. Well, as construction leaders, project leaders, we need to end that kind of infighting. By doing that, To do that, we need to prioritize. We need to help the project team establish what might be priorities. If you say everything is priority, then what's going to happen is people are going to do the easiest, largest volume of work first. They're not going to do the most difficult, small pieces of work and small volume work. And those small pieces are typically work that lets the next trade begin. So as construction leaders, it's important for us to figure out, give a priority so that if there are two, this is one superintendent's managing this workflow, and this is another superintendent managing a different workflow. And they have a conflict. They're trying to get the same workers, the same trade, because you have established in advance that there's a priority level between the different workflows, then there's no argument to be said, right? Rather, we know, this workflow needs to have priority of those workers to enable this one to go first. I'm not saying that, these things need to change. I'm just saying just prioritize it. This will help your whole project. And then at the next level of the last planner system is the phase pull planning phase, right? So in essence, we always have this mantra, go slow to go fast. Well, if we plan well, we will execute as planned. And work plans, I know, no matter how many hundreds of pull plans that I have done, I know all of them could have always been improved. They can always be improved with better work task definitions, the scope, crew sizes and durations, the work sequencing, and right now, especially with COVID-19, the buffers of time or space to enable and maintain the proper social distancing between trades, between workers. Better handoffs between partners, the handoff definition, and better work leveling, which enables us to do tag planning. That's a very popular topic right now within the lead construction circles. Now, there are, you guys are all in a lucky state of time because there's many cloud-based online tools for the last planner system. Try them all out, experiment with them, and you can see some may be helpful for you to do these kinds of meetings virtually now. But now, once you spend some time to improve the quality of your pull plans, now let's think about what can we do next. Maybe let's assume that your project is still being put on hold because of COVID-19. What could you do now? Well, let's work on the make-ready planning. This represents one of the typical ways for many projects to start out to do last planner system. Is to put anywhere from 6 to 8 boards up on the wall. These are little holes in the boards, and there's hooks on the job site wall. And you can attach nails against the wall, and you put these boards up, and then you can put the sticky notes in them to develop the work plan. And after week 1 finishes, you take this board off and march it to the end of the line, and you scoot all these other boards over. There's a lot of job site trailers use slotted systems, slotted channels as well to manage the shifting of the boards. And then you put just week 1 over here, and then week 2 becomes week 1, etc. Right? So this is a typical way to do last planner system implementation, especially for new projects or projects that are less complex. So this allows you to have the window, right? This is the week that we're working in, and there's a week right after it. This allows you to do make-ready planning because you're now able to identify key milestones that are coming up, and you have to figure out the roadblocks. Then you can have work plans to remove those roadblocks. Projects that are challenged, unfortunately, they actually, one of the concepts of the last planner system is to say that you shouldn't have any promises in week 1 if they're constrained by roadblocks. So there should actually be no roadblocks in week 1. All work that's planned have no roadblocks, so they should go as planned. Unfortunately, some projects still struggle to do this, and if that's the case with their projects, then after you improve the work plan based upon the new milestones and where the expectation dates and improving those durations and the crew sizes and the definition of the work task, then spend the time to take away the roadblocks. that are preventing the tasks that need to happen on week one. Once you're allowed to get back on site from happening, remove those roadblocks. In an ideal lean world, I guess, you want to try to remove the roadblocks for at least this week's work and the work following. Always have these 2 weeks have no roadblocks. And as you shift the boards each week, you continue to try to keep no roadblocks in this week and next week's work, so that way trades can work unimpeded and be very productive. That would be ideal practice. But if you want to have ambition, you want to be more ambitious, why don't you say, if you have time during the COVID-19 disruption, remove the roadblocks now for the next 4 weeks, so that you can have hopefully continuous work throughput, and then you can organize and mobilize and coordinate with your fabricators to deliver material at a steady clip and not overwhelm the job site with too much material. Now, what work zones would ensure social distancing between trade partners? This is from one of the job sites near my home. They have a nice banner up there. It's a 6 feet to give each other space, a banner that they posted on site. And I did not have a tape measure with me, but I'm not sure if actually this distance here is 6 feet or this distance here is actually 6 feet. I'd be curious about that, but I would think that the best thing to do is to have on the banner itself, if we're going to do banners like this, the distance right here should be exactly 6 feet. It should be. That's what I would recommend. Okay. Again, from that April 2nd webinar, I saw another good example. On some job sites at Merck, they set up mannequins and they drew a line to show people exactly what 6 feet means. They said 2 meters because the project is abroad. I think this is a very good idea to have on site. But how could we potentially do this too with our planning? Well, maybe we think that based upon the way the job site is laid out, based upon the way the design is and the distance between columns, maybe we'll say that the distance between the columns, so let's assume that this is a very rectangular building, it's just a commercial fit out or whatever, and the distance between the columns are perfect for managing social distancing. So you can translate these column lines into your board system, for instance, right? So you could put the column lines A to B are represented by any sticky notes in this row. Any sticky notes in this row correspond to work happening in columns A to B, right? Any sticky notes put in this row represents the work happening in columns lines B to C. I love referencing column lines when I establish work zones with workers, because it's very clear. There's no way to misinterpret this. There's a lean concept called poka-yoke, which just means foolproofing. You have to make it so clear that they can't misunderstand what you meant, right? So I do very much like column lines to establish work zones, for instance, right? And with the sticky notes there, you can see to make sure that there are no two trades working in the same area at the same time on the same day, for instance. That's one method for you guys to ensure proper social distancing. Another thing that is helpful to do is to think about, if especially you have proverbial sticky notes on site or printouts from your cloud-based software systems and posted on site. Remember how I talked earlier about the different work shifts? You have different work shifts, like maybe you have 2 work shifts, or you may have 3 groups of people. And our foremen are often limited. We don't have that many foremen on site, and the foremen may be critical, and they often are working during the first shift only. So maybe the foremen during the first shift, they're establishing the work plan, right? And they need to make sure to communicate to a rotating group of workers the clear work plan, to have clarity of what the expectation is and where they should be working every day, where, when, and how they get out, and maintain the parade of trades. So one way to do this well, if you want to manage this well on site, is maybe to set up a board or printouts of your work plans and to establish some type of marking system on the sticky notes, on the direct physical sticky notes, or on the printout of the digital work plans. One idea that I've been thinking about is to say that, if a work task is just planned, there's no markings, and if a construction worker says, okay, I'll be able to do this work task, they will draw a box around that sticky note. So this line here, this line drawn about saying in progress, does not have to be done by the construction foreman. It can be done by one of the trades folks in the crew that is committed to doing that work. They're saying, I am working on this task. And the protocol is any construction trade person can work. They can fill this box. And that person, let's say, who's not a foreman, they completed that work. It's protocol that they are going to draw the line here that represents it's complete, right? This is the construction worker, not the foreman. And then later on, maybe, this happens maybe during second shift, right? Or by the third work group, then the foreman is confirming the task is complete, right? This will be done by the foreman only, right? And then after that, maybe we should have an expectation and a protocol for the trade that follows them to fill in the box, this little triangle above, to say, I approve the handoff. If the handoff that they got from the last trade does not have the quality required, they should pull the pull the cord in the production line and stop production and say, I am not getting good quality handoffs. You need to empower the workers so they feel that they have the right, and not only the right to pull the cord, stop production, but the expectation that they should be doing this. This is what we expect them to do, because we don't want them to work off of poor quality. And if you have this behavior happening on projects that workers will not work off of bad handoffs, then what you're doing is you're ensuring built-in quality, which is really important for us. You could have workers working on site, they could do the work, but if they don't do good quality work, you're going to have to go back and redo the work, right? That's just much more expensive. So the following trades will fill this in and say, yes, I confer this I approve the handoff of the trade before me, right? And maybe we will have the assistant superintendent or superintendent who's monitoring that workflow. They may say, I approve what I saw, and maybe you will have some projects have a separate QA/QC team. They will come in and do the third, approve. Maybe the last, we'll leave the last quadrant to be filled in by the punch list group, right? Punch list approved, But make it visual so that on site people can see what's going on really at a quick glance and not have to go through papers or lots of logins or something to see what's going on site. And that enables us to have quicker daily stand-up meetings, to coordinate what's going on site. Daily stand-up meetings should not spend time statusing. The status should be clear to all. Everyone should understand the status of what's going on and what to be done. And focus instead on exceptions to the work plan. We're expecting everything on the work plan to happen as planned. And if there are exceptions, then we're going to swarm and figure out how to problem solve to prevent those problems from happening. We might have to create some workarounds in the interim, for instance. DPR provides for me an example of, a very simple Kanban board that you could do on site, especially, and this may be the case on COVID projects in which it's really unclear what kind of work needs to be, what workflows are happening, but you can have a quick list of work to do, doing, and done, right? And this may be a way for the foreman in the first shift to communicate what things they need to do. Maybe this might be for a board for each of the trades. So the foremen fill out the stuff that they need to be doing, and the workers that come in the second or third groups, they will move. The protocol expectation is that they will move the stickies over to doing and then done. And to maintain the expectation of the protocol that you can really only be working on one thing at a time, for instance. Okay, so with that, I've covered basic elements of the last planner system to guide us in this sort of crisis situation with COVID-19. During the CURT session on Tuesday, someone asked me, how do you determine the ROI for these extra efforts added because of COVID-19? What we mean by the extra efforts is, for example, paying for 40 hours a week when you get only 36 hours of work time from the workers, or adding all the social distancing, etc. But one of the things that I sort of thought about when I was asked that question is, it reminds me very much of this question instead, and I'm sure many of you get this question too, which is, how do you determine the ROI for implementing lean on projects? I get this question a lot. I've been working on lean since 1997 as a student, as a researcher, as a learner, and been working on trying to provide the results to show that there is an ROI. The International Group for Lean Construction, unfortunately this year, they're not going to hold an in-person meeting. They're going to have a virtual meeting, but it's up to 28 years. We've had over 28 years of results from projects throughout the United States and abroad, in other countries, projects of all types, projects of all sizes. And to me, the data is clear. There is definitely an ROI on implementing lean on projects. And you just need to look to find it. There is a good smart market report, I believe that was done in 2013 from McGraw-Hill, that also documents the ROIs for implementing lean on projects. But this reminds me then of what Greg Howell once said to me after I've been working for 10 years, I think, into my lean journey on trying to get results to the people that lean is important. They should try to do lean. Greg Howell said to me, Cynthia, results don't convince. And when he said that to me, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I've been working for 10 years to develop the results and, show the results, and working with my partners and research and all that to show the results. He goes, well, results really don't convince. So the thing is this, how do you, convince people to implement lean on projects? We need to think really back to what I started with, which was the mood. And the question is, do you have the mood of ambition and the resolution to uphold these principles or not? Do you have ambition and the resolution to uphold these principles? And that is the principles of respect for people and continuous improvement. Because if you truly believe in these principles, right, you will work on lean. You will be on a lean journey, and you will work on that doggedly, right? Also, Greg said to me another thing that I thought was very interesting. He says, after I explain lean construction to people, they often say to me, well, that's just common sense. Right? That's just common sense when I explain lean construction to people. But Greg notes, well, unfortunately, the sense isn't common. So with that, I hope that you guys will think about having that ambition to uphold the principles of respect for people and continuous improvement, to work towards lean, because that's the right thing to do. I do want to say very briefly, I want to mention to everyone that I am working on an initiative right now with a nonprofit group that I've been developing for the past 2 years for building AEC learning through peer learning groups, communities of practice between owners, architects, engineers, and contractors to learn from each other to efficiently and effectively serve society. And just because of COVID-19, now I'm mobilizing and accelerating our efforts now to figure out how can we provide an open source resources for COVID-19 solutions for rapid expansion of healthcare facilities. I've been working with a group of about 30 people for the past 3 weeks. It hasn't been that long. And we are setting up a number of ways to interact with many of you. Our mission is for the AEC industry to be efficient and effective in serving society. The AEC community must rapidly identify, implement, and share lessons learned about the best regulatory, design, supply chain, and construction solutions used to address societal needs. This is especially the case now, as we are all in the midst of the challenges created by COVID-19. I invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Pretty soon we will be opening up we already have a private Facebook group, but we'll be opening it pretty soon. And I invite you to join us to work together towards, rapidly learning from each other, sharing the best information, identifying the space problems that our groups are having throughout the world, and to share the proposed space solutions. This runs a whole gamut of prefabricated elements, etc., and to document the implemented space solutions, and to find out from those implementations, their lessons learned. Again, what worked well, what would they recommend other projects to do too, but what would they change, right? So what were some mistakes that they made? Let us share those mistakes so that future projects don't do them